Okay, hi everybody. I just wanted to come to you live. They've had some exciting news that really gave me an opportunity to kind of give some information that some of you may have heard me talk about before and some of you may have not heard me talk about. So I want to talk about the HLA DRB gene test. So I absolutely am obsessed with this test. I pretty much do it on anybody who has a complex case because the gene test is really just phenomenal. So I'm going to give you in just a second. I'm sorry, I didn't go through the right program to be able to screen share with you. But the HLA DRB gene test is something I use in all of my complex cases, and it really is something that stands apart, that really sets apart like how I do things and how I roadmap things that aren't. So an HLA DRB, basically what they're testing is your innate or inborn immune system. They're testing certain genes, and that what they've discovered with over 50,000 PubMed papers is that certain combinations of certain genes in these patterns create the propensity for specific diseases. For example, there's a gene combination for multiple sclerosis, there's a one for narcolepsy, there's one for this, there's one for that. There's a whole bunch of different gene combinations that contribute to disease, and it doesn't mean that you're going to get that one, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to get something else. It's just that these certain gene combinations seem to correlate with the people getting this one. And the reason it does that is that these genes that we're born with, they're not something that turn on or off. Your innate immune system is something that's on from day one. It's just part of your inborn. It's not an acquired immune system. It's actually like the opposite. It's something that's not acquired. And so what happens is that when you come in contact with specific types of toxins, that your body is unable to neutralize them and then take out the trash, where the rest of the population can take out the trash. Now, each gene combination has different types of toxins, different classes of toxins that they're prone to, or I would say prone to, that they can't get rid of. It doesn't mean they're going to be exposed to them. It doesn't mean that that's going to build up in their system. It doesn't mean that that's going to be exposed enough to where it's going to cause disease, but it does mean that they can't get rid of them. So for example, if I have the gene combination for narcolepsy, I'm going to accumulate specific toxins if I'm exposed to them. And then that's going to build up in my system and it's going to contribute to narcolepsy. So this could happen when you're very young. It could happen when you're very old. It could happen at any time in your life. I've seen people develop anywhere from like 2 years old until their 20s, and I'm sure other people have developed it later, but I usually don't see patients who just spontaneously acquire something at 80 years old. So what this is also interesting is not only does it help us like protect you. For example, one of the things that I really recommend for like mothers to do, if you're suffering with chronic illness, and what I mean by that is basically, you know, like if you have autoimmune disease, if you have neurological disorders, whether they be depression, anxiety, narcolepsy, chronic fatigue syndrome, or any of the schizophrenia, anything that's neurological, it could be fibromyalgia, it could be anything having to do with the nervous system or the brain, then, or any autoimmune, whether it be one or it be like a whole bunch of them. And just to kind of give you an example of how many people have one of these gene combinations, it's about 25% of the population. But in my office, every single person I've ever tested came back positive, like not one single negative. And that's kind of significant in this world. This is a major contributor. And like I said, there's over 50,000 PubMed papers on these gene combinations. But when you inspect these gene combinations further, 90% contain either a DQ2 or a DQ3. The ones that I did not have one of those genes on, the person was able to tell me from the medical history that they also carried a DQ8. Even though the DQ8 is not significant in these genes, it's like, it seems to be like an addition. And what those genes are is they're celiac genes. And it doesn't mean the celiac gene is like, it doesn't mean you're celiac. It just means, hey, my inborn immune system already recognizes certain things as like doesn't belong. And so that is why we have like, that's one of the reasons why you could have like non-celiac gluten sensitivity. There's actually 6 celiac genes, although only 2 are like most of the cases that are on, but that's changing because of our exposure to like glyphosate and stress, et cetera, et cetera. But when I know which gene you're carrying, I also know that you're prone to certain things, and it really tells me like how strict I need to be on an elimination diet. It tells me what you're at risk for. For example, I think I've done a video before about the DQ3 gene and how it's really tied to neurological disorders. And I found it in every single dysautonomia case. I've also found it in cases that weren't dysautonomia yet, or that weren't having neurological problems yet. But this DQ3, I've also been able to associate it and correlate it with certain neurotransmitters that were causing anxiety and depression. In fact, I've even found it that same one, it's like those people either have anxiety and depression, and in some cases, when combined with other factors as well, they can even lead to like anxiety disorders. And so it's very, very interesting how much it will tell me about not only like where to look and how strict to be, but what foods that you might react to, what pattern of foods to protect you from losing. I mean, it's just amazing. And that's not even the part that the research is like heavy on. The research it tells me that once I take this gene test and then I run it through the converter, it tells me which toxins to protect you from. Which toxins do I not need you to be exposed to? Where do we need to hone in on? There's like a million toxins in the world. I have a handout that I use with my clients, and it has 3 pages of listing of toxins and the various diseases that they connect with. But this helps me hone down on what I can ignore that isn't as important for you, things that you can get rid of, and then the ones that you can't. So I might want to avoid the other ones also, but these are the ones that I really need to hone in on and really need to help your body assist on how to get rid of and how to protect you. This also is great for mothers out there, because if you're dealing with one of these issues, you probably carry that gene combination. And there's a very good chance that one of your children have some of those gene combinations too. They won't have the exact same combination because of the influence of their father's genetics, but there's a big chance that they will have a gene combination because some of those genes repeat in the different combinations, at least partially. And so this is a great way for mothers to protect their children from going through what they've gone through. So for example, I have a client and she's what I call a kitchen sink diagnosis, and she really wants to get pregnant. And one of my biggest recommendations to her is that when she has her baby, to gene test it, so that she can protect her baby and say, be like, hey, my baby is sensitive to A, B, and C, and this runs in the family, and match those 2 things up and say, okay, I need to be really, really careful with these types of toxins or these types of foods. And that's the way that you can prevent disease happening from your children. It's just amazing. You can also prevent disease happening from you based on what you know about your genetics, mixed with your medical history, mixed with what you've been exposed to, mixed with a whole bunch of different pieces where we put your puzzle together. So I wanted to come on and talk about the HLA DRB gene, because I wanted you to know how amazing this test is. But also because this weekend only, the lab is 10% off. And that's kind of a big deal when you're talking about a $289 test. To get, $30 off, it can make it a little bit more accessible. It can help cut the cost a little bit. It's not just that test that's on sale, it's all the tests through this testing website that I'm about to refer you to. If you go over to my Instagram, you can find a link in my bio. In a few minutes after I finish this video, I'm going to put a link to the HLA DRB test in the comments and the discount code that you use at checkout. So if you want to know more about this gene test, of course, by all means, ask me about it. I'll tell you what all I can tell you about it. It's just an absolutely phenomenal test, and it's such a good indicator of how to handle your bioindividuality, especially after you're already inflamed and already sick. Then we just know why, basically. For example, one type of test, it comes back and it tells me like to stay away from blue-green algae, and it tells me not to swim in this types of water, and it tells me to avoid these specific fish because they are grown in the blue-green algae. Like, it gets that specific. Or it might say, hey, you're really prone to Lyme disease. Like, you need to be really careful because you won't just get Lyme disease, you'll get something called post-Lyme syndrome. Or another gene test will tell me, hey, you need to avoid Gardasil because you are likely to be vaccine injured by Gardasil. And like I said, 50,000 PubMed papers. So I wanted to let you guys know about this. I'm going to take the weekend off, so I won't see you much this weekend. I might pop in a little bit from the cabin. We're going to a farm. I'll try to take some pictures because there's like goats and donkeys and stuff, so yay. But I will be popping in at least by the time the weekend's over if I don't pop in this weekend. and answer any of those questions. Just tag me so that I have that kind of as a to-do list. And in a few minutes, I'm going to put the link to the HLA DRB test for anyone who decides they want to check that out, and the discount code, because even if you don't get an HLA DRB test, if you're looking for something else, like maybe you're looking for a cortisol test, or maybe you're looking for a stool test, or a neurotransmitter test, or any other kind of test, that test is also available at 10% off this weekend. The sale ends at Monday at midnight. And I really hope that you guys have a fantastic Labor Day weekend. I hope you eat some yummy food that also helps you heal and helps power your body to be able to do amazing things. Try to find some nutrient-dense, really fun foods. For example, what's something fun that you can make this weekend is a coconut ice cream using coconut milk, pureed strawberries, a couple tablespoons of maple syrup, and an ice cream maker. Or you can freeze that and make it into popsicles. So that's a really something fun that you can do to make this a little bit more fun and still power your body with nutrient-dense foods. Happy Labor Day, everybody. You guys have a great Friday. Thank you so much. And thank you, Kendall and Krista, for joining me live. I really appreciate it. Bye.